So we stand for our pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, hello and good evening, and welcome to our MSD Pike Township School Board regular meeting tonight, March 12th, 2026. First up is a good of the cause. If there's anyone that want to share, please come step forward, 3 minutes, and state your name, and only for the good of the cause. We don't have any good of the cause. We move on. The spotlight on Pike, Sarah Dorsey.
Good evening. It's wonderful to see you all. We have had a lot of amazing things going on in Pike today and since the last time we met, as always. Our Eel Creek Elementary School choir recently performed at a Pacers game. New Augusta South invited several of their families in on a weekend, and they wrote words of encouragement to their students who were preparing to take a standardized test. We thought that that was just such a creative and great way to get our families engaged and also encourage our students. Today, several, probably hundreds of our junior and senior student athletes had the opportunity to learn about the importance of mental health from the perspective of a student athlete and the challenges that go along with that. We hosted our annual mental health fair, which this year had 63 vendors, and that was organized by Pike High School's Brain Change to Mind Club. Those students are amazing. I got to sit in a bit of the student panel, and just to hear them talk about the importance of mental health, what they hope or wished adults would know, the challenges that they're facing, and even see that one of the panelists was a Pike grad that's currently enrolled in college who finds it so valuable that he came back was certainly heartwarming. And I do want to acknowledge our district social worker, Mrs. Tanya Monnier, and one of our department chairs, Amber McKinney, who are our Bring Change to Mind sponsors and do a lot of work on that event and the various events that we have to support mental health. Our Pike High School Red Devil dancers placed 4th in jazz and 1st in hip hop at their regional competition, advancing to compete at the state competition, which will be at the state fairgrounds this Saturday. Their jazz performance is scheduled to take place at 2 p.m. and their hip hop performance is at 5 p.m. So we are extremely excited for them and wish them the best of luck. As you may have seen, our boys swimming team celebrated their best performance ever at state. They actually broke their own records, our school records, I think 3 times in one occasion. So they were phenomenal, and we are so proud of them. Our Pike High School boys basketball team will play in the regional final at Southport this Saturday at 4 p.m. Coach Teague and junior Isaiah Hill were voted Marion County Player and Coach of the Year, respectively. So we would like to congratulate them as well. And if yes. I also don't know if you follow Coach Hollins on social media, but it is a full-time job trying to keep up with the number of individual player recognitions our girls basketball players are receiving. And then today, they actually received a team recognition for their academic achievements. So we're extremely proud of them. Our Pike High School Performing Arts Department will host their annual Winter Showcase on Monday, March 16th at 6:30 p.m. Generally, that performance or that program takes place in the gym over at the high school, but this year it will be at the Pike Performing Arts Center. It's free admission, and you get to see several of our amazing Pike High School performing arts groups in action. We want to congratulate our Guyan Creek Elementary School robotics team who qualified for their state competition. So we look forward to sharing more about that and wish them the best of luck. We want to publicly acknowledge the generous donations listed on this evening's agenda, which include an anonymous donation of $15, a $25 donation from Natalie Jackson, a $50 donation from Summer A. Furnace Lodge number 61, and a $500 from Claire Wardlow on behalf of New Augusta South to our Red Zone Food Pantry. Grants totaling $5,556 to support classroom projects at Eastbrook, Deer Run, Central, and College Park Elementary Schools. A donation of $1,400 for supplies for students at Snacks Crossing Elementary School from One Fellowship Church, and a $5,000 donation from Apex Benefits to support this year's teacher celebration event. We're so grateful to all of our donors for their support. And last but not least, we have some special guests from the Indiana Members Credit Union with us tonight for a check presentation. Thanks to an initiative that you all approved, the community now has an opportunity to show their Pike pride while supporting the MSD of Pike Township with a Pike debit card, and that's already paying dividends. And so we would like to invite them forward for a check presentation. It's Miss Lindsay Coe, Tanner Sightsinger, and Batana Dominguez.
Like that's the entire board.
Sorry.
Board, we can come forward here, because we're gonna take a picture here too. The entire board, y'all can come.
Okay.
We're gonna take a picture. Since it's the credit union.
Oh, I'm so honored to be in the picture with you. Honored.
Do a couple. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then switch from. I don't know if I'm that talented, guys. Okay. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Mr. Tanner, this might be a better picture. You might have to share it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so honored. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you.
Oh, my God. Lord help.
That was nice.
Good God, wasn't it?
All right, we're on to reports to the board. Policy Analytics, Mrs. Gray and Parkinson.
Good evening, Mr. President,
Good
members
evening.
of the board, and Dr. Young. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Matt Parkinson from Policy Analytics, who is here tonight to present an analysis of the property tax trends, including SCA 1 2025, and how these factors may impact the MSD of Pike Township. MSD of Pike Township has been working with Policy Analytics since 2025. Policy Analytics works with more than 100 Indiana school districts, providing revenue forecast, tax-based analysis, and financial modeling. Mr. Parkinson currently serves as the project director with the firm and previously served as CFO for MSD Warren Township, as well as CFO for Danville Community Schools. He also served as the Deputy Commissioner at the Indiana Department of Local Government Finance and is a certified public accountant. Mr. Parkinson, thank you for being here today, and at this time, I will turn it over to you. Board members, there's a copy of the presentation in your packets, if you'd like to follow along.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It's a privilege to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm going to go off script for just a moment, if you're willing to indulge me. Mr. Jacob is in the room. He doesn't know I'm going to give him a special shout out. Mr. Jacob was the dean at Lowell Elementary School in Warren Township when I was a fifth grade student. Don't feel a certain way about that.
Wow.
He became legend in my family. I have a younger brother that got a little squirrely on the school bus one morning and got called into the dean's office and was set straight. And I'm pretty sure he never misbehaved again. So Mr. Jacob's the nicest man in the world, but also took care of my brother that evening. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I really appreciate it. We're going to talk about Senate Enrolled Act 1 from 2025 and property tax reform and what it means for MSD Pike and for Indianapolis and Indiana school districts in general. I'll try to move, reasonably quickly through it. There's a lot of technical material. Welcome questions at any point if there's anything that we want to discuss in more depth. So just in terms of our methodology, what policy analytics does that's kind of our differentiator is our analysis goes down to the parcel level, which means when we're looking at property tax reform and property tax policies, we simulate individual tax bills and then sum it up to understand what the impact is for Pike and for all the other school districts that we work with around the state. So I am going to go through this slide because I think it's an important one, despite the fact that it's kind of heavy on text. Senate Enrolled Act 1 is really the most fundamental reform we've had in property taxes since the implementation of circuit breaker, or tax caps, nearly 20 years ago. So among the changes that we're going to see, homestead deductions are going to increase over the next 5 years. So when we, just nomenclature-wise, when we refer to a deduction on a homestead, that's an owner-occupied property. An owner-occupied property has a gross assessed value. So if we have a $300,000 house, for instance, today, before that, the tax rates applied on that bill, there's a deduction that's in the neighborhood of 40% applied on that bill. By the time SEA 1 is fully phased in 2031, that'll be a 2/3 deduction. So that $300,000 house will be taxed on $100,000 of its value. In the same way, we've got new deductions for the first time on 2% properties. So 2% properties are rental homes, apartment complexes, farmland. Those properties historically haven't had deductions. We're going to see a phased-in approach where we get to a 33% deduction 5 years from now. The third one, and the one that's most impactful immediately, is the implementation of a new homestead credit. So all homestead taxpayers starting in 2026 are eligible for a credit of 10% of their bill up to a maximum of $300. That's an unfunded credit, so it's to the benefit of the taxpayer. But it results in a revenue reduction for school districts and other types of local governments. The next two are really kind of closely related, but they're significant, especially for a community like Pike. Business personal property is subject to property tax. That's machinery, equipment, essentially non-fixed items within a business environment. Historically, or in recent years, up to $80,000 of business personal property has been exempt from taxation. Starting in 2027, so on next year's tax bills, that goes from $80,000 to $2 million. So essentially, small businesses will be exempt from property tax on their personal property. And then for larger enterprises, and there's a number of them here in this community, of course, for larger enterprises, for equipment put in place in 2026 and beyond, they'll be able to, over the long term, depreciate that property further for property tax purposes. So really, there's both a short-term and a long-term move on reducing property taxes for business personal property. And then finally, some changes a little bit less significant in the Indianapolis area in terms of farmland and some of the other credits. But really, what the overall kind of theme here is the General Assembly was looking to provide property tax relief, and in many ways they did. But it's going to shift the way that school districts, manage their property tax funds moving forward. So we'll take a look at some of the revenue impacts and what Pike can expect. I think this is kind of a neat map. This is all 290 or so school districts around the state. Those that are in blue saw revenue growth, all the assessed value growth for 2026. All of the Marion County school districts did. Really the theme is communities in urban areas and suburban areas generally saw growth. Where we see the red and the orange is where communities saw declines in net assessed value this year. Those are typically communities that are heavy in farmland. Having said that, we're going to look at a slide in just a moment. We expect that most school districts around the state are going to see declines in net assessed value each year from now through the remainder of the implementation of Senate Enrolled Act 1. So again, that's just going to change the way that we think about property taxes for school districts. This is a chart showing the composition of the taxing districts within the school district boundaries. A taxing district is a unique set of taxing units, so the county government, the city government, township, in your case, a single township, of course, and really 98% of your tax base, 97% of your tax base is within one taxing district, which is the chart on the far left. In teal is the school district's tax rate. Board, as you're all aware, it's a $1 tax rate for the community. And then we've got the overlapping tax rates for, again, the county and the township. One item that's noteworthy for the three township school districts on the west side of Marion County is with fire service still sitting at the township government level as opposed to the consolidated city level. The township tax rates in Pike, Wayne, and Decatur, not for the school district, but for the township government itself, are somewhat higher than they are in the rest of the county. You do pay a little bit less toward the city's property tax rate because you're not paying into fire for the city. But on the whole, the township's fire rate is a little bit higher than the city's would be. So it's just a unique element to the west side school districts. There's a little bit more property tax liability for fire services. This chart takes a look at a 5-year history. And again, the one on the left is almost all of the tax base here within MSD Pike. 5-year history, your school district has kept a level tax rate by design, I'm certain. For the last few years, with really the only change being after passage of the operating referendum, implementation of that 24-cent rate. That's been a common strategy, and I think a strategy that's easy for taxpayers to understand when they look at their tax bill. I do have probably the unfortunate duty to share. It's going to be challenging for anybody to maintain that strategy moving forward. That's a function, again, of Senate Enrolled Act 1. So again, we expect assessed values to decline over the next 5 years, and the fraction for the tax rate is the levy in the numerator and the assessed value in the denominator. So even in a school district that holds levies stable, as those assessed values decline, we expect to see tax rates go up. That's not necessarily an indication of what's going to mean for a taxpayer, but it's just a function of those new deductions coming into place. So we're going to project what your tax rates could look like, but that's really kind of the significance of that piece of the reform is tax rates are going up, and it's just going to be a different kind of message for taxpayers around the state.
Can I ask a question at that point?
Sure.
So if what I hear you saying is, so while what they're paying in taxes would not necessarily change, the tax rate would go up just because because the assessed value has gone down.
That's right.
Okay,
In some cases, tax bills will go down as a function of their deductions increasing, and then that 10% credit. And in fact, we expect your typical taxpayer to pay a lower tax bill in 2026 than they did in 2025.
Okay.
But even in future years, as it starts to rebound a little bit, that tax rate increase isn't necessarily correlated with a tax bill increase.
Okay.
They'll have a lower tax base on their tax bill and then a higher tax rate.
Okay.
May I also ask a question? So the 26 will be probably the best year for us.
In terms of the taxpayer?
Yes.
We do anticipate 2026 will be the best year, and it'll start to bounce back in 2027, and their tax bills probably in that year will look pretty close to what they looked like in 2025.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
So to kind of put this in a nutshell, 2031, the pie is going to get a lot smaller when it comes to how the tax base is divided up for the school district, obviously for the fire department, for the government.
That's exactly right. By 2031, we expect we'll be at our lowest point in terms of the overall tax base, in the foreseeable future. And then from that point, assuming the law stands as it is right now, deductions will be fully phased in. We would expect it to start growing from there. But we probably won't get back to 2026 or 2025 net assessed values for close to a decade.
Yeah. Like interest rates will never be 3.5%.
Well, that's true too. That is true too. That's very true. So it's just an interesting way that the property tax reform played out. The General Assembly, reduced the tax base quite a bit. I do have some better news, and it's not all bad news. In a relative sense, for MSD Pike, as you're aware, you've got a nice balanced property tax base here in the community. A good mix of homestead properties, which are capped at 1%, rental properties, apartment complexes capped at 2%. And then a really nice business presence, which makes a big difference in terms of your overall property tax base. So in this chart, we're taking a look at your peers around the state in terms of enrollment. So the 5 districts right above, 5 districts right below Pike in terms of number of students who attend the school district. And then we take that divided by total, or it's the assessed value divided by that count. And you're on the end of this chart that I think you'd want to be on. You've got a little bit more assessed value base to work with per student than some of your peers do. That's especially relevant for an operating referendum fund, because it means you can have a lower tax rate, and you do have a pretty modest referendum tax rate. You can have a lower tax rate and generate, some more dollars to work with than a district that's on the opposite end of this chart range. Looking at it within the county, so as Ms. Gray mentioned, I was fortunate to serve as CFO at MSD Warren for 4.5 years. I was jealous at the time of MSD Pike and MSD Washington for this chart here. It's, again, really healthy business presence, makes a big difference in your overall tax base. And I should say, in terms of the tax reform, the one group that's really not going to see a lot is real property, commercial property. So that's, physical buildings and land for business. which is a big portion of your tax base. And so, the loss in your community, you're going to feel it. Maybe not as much if reform is targeted toward that group. There tends to be an inverse relationship between assessed values and tax rates. As assessed values go up, tax rates typically go down. That's true among your peers. You've got a relatively lower tax rate compared to many of your peers, and that correlates with the higher tax base. And then within Marion County, and this is one that I think you can take a lot of pride in, you have the lowest property tax rate among the 11 school districts in Marion County. And that's even with the operating referendum. You're at just over $1 this year. So I think that's a signal of disciplined fiscal management, some really intentional planning around property taxes. So that's, again, credit to you, and it's to the benefit of your taxpayers. This is a scatter plot showing all the school districts in the state. Across the x-axis going horizontal is that assessed value per student metric. The y-axis is tax rate. You can picture a sort of downward sloping line. As assessed value increases, tax rates go down. MSD Pike is right where you'd expect to be. You're not an outlier high or low. You're where you'd expect to be with the assessed value level that you have. And again, this is just looking at it within your peer districts by enrollment, and then within Marion County, the low tax rate, relatively healthy assessed value per student. So I'm going to start getting into a few sort of revenue figures, but be happy to answer any questions about assessed value if anybody has any. Okay.
I guess I do. So when property tax feeds into our operational fund, right? That's okay. So when we're saying assessed value per student, that's not necessarily when we're doing the ADM counts and that stuff. That's for the other. This is just to let us know. Okay.
That's right.
Just making sure I'm tracking.
You have four major funds, education, and that one's not property tax funded.
Right.
And that's your largest.
Right.
That benefits from state funding.
Yeah.
And then you have 3 property tax funds: operations, debt service, and operating referendum. So those are the funds that are impacted by property tax reform.
Okay.
So what we're looking at in this chart in the Navy is assessed value growth over the last decade. And, we've all seen it in home values. Assessed values have risen in recent years, and that's what General Assembly reacted to. In the teal, we see the declines in assessed values that we're expecting through 2031 as those deductions phase in, and especially in 2027 as we look at business personal property being partially exempted. So again, as board, as you go through setting your tax rate, adopting your budget this fall, probably for you and almost everybody, the conversation is just going to feel a little bit different. That $1 strategy, you could do it. You would have to forego revenue to make that happen. Most districts, I suspect, are going to allow their tax rates to rise just as a function of what's happened with tax reform. This slide's an important one, relatively technical. When Senate Enrolled Act 1 passed, the debt service fund was not protected from the impact of the 10% credit. So that's that new credit on the end of the property tax bill. So as Senate Enrolled Act 1 passed, school districts can apply that credit to both their debt service fund and the operations fund. That's different from circuit breaker, and you've navigated circuit breaker for years. Circuit breaker, by and large, only impacts the operations fund. Starting in 2027, because of legislative action this year, that'll be the case for the 10% credit this year as well. This year, the district has the option to spread that credit between debt service and operations. We've already talked to Ms. Gray, we've talked to Young about this. I encourage you to talk to your bond counsel, your municipal advisor. Right. I think most districts will choose to do that. It safeguards the operations fund for one more year. Again, this one's a little bit text heavy, but I do want to hit just a couple things on this. So moving down kind of toward the bottom of this, underneath the column that says, or the rows that say net levy. Now I want to point out one area where property tax reform really did deliver property tax relief for taxpayers, but to the challenge of school districts, is on an operating referendum fund. So as your assessed values decline between now and 2031, we would expect your operating referendum to decline with it. And again, that's going to be true of almost everybody in the state with a referendum fund. So much so that 2026 is probably the peak year of operating referendum revenue for the duration of your referendum until you go out to run it again. Again, that's true of almost everybody. And that's just as assessed values decline, multiplied by that fixed tax rate, revenue for the referendum fund will go with it. I want to point out too, we've got tax rates forecasted here. Your tax rate this year was $1. If we hold the debt service levy stable and let the operations fund grow just by the kind of standard maximum levy growth quotient it can every year, we'd expect your tax rate potentially to go to $1.06 next year, to $1.10 in the year after that. And that's not a function of anybody doing anything wrong. It's just, again, as that denominator shrinks, that's the way the fraction works. I do think that's going to be a messaging factor for taxpayers. Taxpayers are going to see higher rates, and in fairness, most folks, don't know what exactly goes into it, understandably. So I do think it's going to be a messaging factor for members of the community. The final piece I want to point out.
Can I slow you down there? Sorry, another question. So when we look at the rates that are going to affect the property tax, though, we are only one portion of it, right?
That's right.
So if what we decide to do, then the fire department, the township government, each of those other buckets, what they decide to do is going to have an impact on that rate.
It will. That's
The
exactly
total
right.
rate, yeah.
And you have taxpayers who are at their tax caps, their circuit breaker limit, which means, the way that those dollars are distributed is proportionate to the tax rate. So if the school district has 50% of the tax rate, you receive 50% of that taxpayer's dollars. Just theoretically, if the district were to choose not to raise its rate and the other local governments did, but that taxpayer was already at their cap, they're still paying the same amount they ever did, but the distribution is going to go proportionately more toward the township government and the city government.
Okay.
So from a planning perspective, I think it would be prudent to expect that your overlapping units taxing rates are probably going to go up as well. And you protect your piece of the pie to a certain extent, if you let that happen with yours as well.
Mr. Parkinson,
Yes, sir.
the referendum piece. So when these numbers begin to go down, the referendum will shrink.
We expect so. That's
You
right.
expect it to shrink. So say you're at 20 million a year.
Yes.
The peak year would be 26, as you say.
Right.
27 it'll start going down.
Yes.
And we don't know where that will land the first year.
Well, so we've estimated it on here. We assumed a degree of.
I saw the estimation, but I was wondering.
Right.
I'll answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to know for sure at this point.
Yeah, that's
we
what-
assumed a degree of growth in gross assessed values somewhere around 3 or 4%. But the pace of deductions will outpace that. They'll grow larger than gross assessed value, we believe. And that'll be true, we think, each year, which is why we had that declining net assessed value. So, yeah, I will concede these are estimates, and it's hard to say for sure that's what the number is. But I do think the trend of that revenue going down is probably pretty reliable.
Yeah, okay.
I do want to point out one other piece that just, I think messaging-wise is important for the Marion County school districts. And when I was in Warren, I spoke to our legislators about this a lot. And that's on that middle line with charter share. So you're aware of this. You're sharing you're sharing referendum dollars today with charter schools. To a really limited extent, you're sharing operations fund dollars. Part of what happened with SEA 1 is through a policy that the state enacted. That takes off in a major way on the operations fund starting in 2028 and phasing in through 2031. So that by 2031, essentially, a student who resides within MSD Pike boundaries but whose family opts for a charter school, the dollars from property taxes from the operations fund would flow to that school in proportion to their kind of piece of the tax base. That's a real shift in property tax policy in the sense those districts or those charter schools have historically received no or very little property tax dollars. For Pike and for every Marion County district, that's another limit on the way the operations fund dollars are going to grow through 2031. And then it'll stabilize, but short of a legislative change, that's a part of the equation moving forward. So I think for Indianapolis districts, that's an important piece to understand is they're already funded by the state through state tuition support. Property taxes are going to be a piece of it moving forward as well. This is just an estimate of what's going to look like for the median taxpayer. So good news for the taxpayer, I think, in 2026, we expect for the average homeowner or the median homeowner that their tax bill will be lower in 2026 than it was in 2025. And really the bulk of that is because of the very last line right above net liability, which is that 10% credit. We expect that the median taxpayer will have a credit of a little over $250 on their bill. It's unfunded, meaning that limits revenue for the school district and local governments, but it is to the benefit of the taxpayer. In 2026, we expect it to rebound and then kind of steady growth from there at a slightly slower clip than we've seen in recent years.
I think one thing we have to keep in mind with these charts, though, and like you keep saying, unless there's additional legislation. So at any point in the future, they could look at this and say, oh, it's 20, not even that far in the future, 2029. We don't like this going up. We're going to make another rule that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that certainly could happen.
Yeah.
You know, one piece of it especially is this mechanism's in place on this post-circuit breaker credit now, that 10% credit. Now, to be clear, no, I've never heard these numbers, but just theoretically, there's no reason that couldn't be a 15% credit, or it couldn't be capped at $500 instead of $300. I mean, the mechanism is there now, so if the state wants to control property taxes in that way, that's how they could do it.
Yeah, so I mainly wanted that clear. You know, we're in an election year this year, and then every 2 years, for anybody who may be watching this and considering how they're going to vote, the impact this is having on the township. So, thank you.
So just looking at revenue, these two lines are really close to each other for Pike. But what we've got, the blue line is for your operations fund, what we would expect as it passed in Senate Enrolled Act 1. The orange line is with that one technical change where all of the 10% credit has to flow to the operations fund. So while the gap is really small between these, assuming you choose to spread your credits to operations and debt service in 2026, we would expect you'll be on the blue line and then jump down to the orange line in 2027. But really the broader message here is very limited growth in the operations fund over the next few years, certainly slower than the pace of cost increases from the last few years. You know, so what that really requires of any school district, not just Pike, but any school district, is we have to be really disciplined about things we can control within operations to the extent we can. If there's measures we can take to lower utility costs, being mindful of the fuel we're putting into school buses, staffing, some of those hard decisions are realistic now that we look at you know, this revenue picture moving forward.
Wow.
Do you have a similar graph to this that overlays, and I know all of these are projections, but rates of inflation, like where that hits with it? Because that's what kind of matters in this too, right? We see up, so that's fine, but if the inflation up is at a steeper angle, that kind of paints another story for us.
So
and for the community.
yeah,
honestly.
for sure. So we don't right now, but I'd be happy to provide something like that and send it over to
Okay.
Ms. Gray so she could supply it to you.
Another issue, Ms. Graves, if I might ask, the top line that Mr. Parkinson is talking about, are we going to do our best to make that, get the best out of that top line while we can in 26 before we move over into 27?
Yes.
Do you have any idea how you're going to work that? If it's not a bad question to ask.
No, actually, it's a great question. Dr. Young and I have been speaking with our advisors at Baker Tilly as well as Policy Analytics to see how we can pivot now that we know the impact. We see the modeling, and he mentioned kind of changing our strategy from a tax rate neutral strategy to a levy neutral strategy, just to make sure we protect those funds. So we are in talks right now. We haven't prepared that budget yet. We'll be doing that this summer, but we'll absolutely have discussion with the board and administration on how we're going to move forward.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
One thing with picking back off what Steve said, when you put together a report to come back to us about inflation, can we get like a worst case scenario? And what I mean by worst case scenario, you know, things that are going outside that directly affect our economy, like the war, you know, cost of materials going up, because that's going to have a direct effect. Like when you mentioned, we have to be mindful how much gas that we put in buses, but you know, when diesel fuel we put in buses, but when the price of the barrel goes up, you know, that directly affects. So if we can get a worst case scenario, say maybe 15%, you know, defect. You know, how far, I know that's pretty stretched, because if we have to go 15% below what we got now, everyone's in trouble.
Sure,
But
yeah.
just kind of have that mindset what we're looking at, so that I think it hits harder to keep us on track with. We really need to be mindful of good stewardship with our finances.
Yeah, we're happy to do that. You know, even outside of this, one thing that, you know, we're fortunate to work with your team on is some kind of cash flow modeling. And we've got different cost assumptions in there. And it'd be, you know, straightforward for us to make sort of different assumptions around what those things could be. And we're happy to do that and help model it out and share it and, you know, just take a look at what those would look like.
Mr. Parkinson, is there any way that you could create a package or create a strategy or structure that could be community friendly. Not only community friendly, but board friendly, for people to be able to look at what's really happening and be able to monitor what's going on with our school district. Does that make sense?
It does. But yeah, absolutely, we can help you with that. But, I want to be mindful of respecting, roles and so on. I think we could do a really straightforward job of supplying data and helping to get it into a way that's consumable. We'd probably lean on, Dr. Young and Ms. Gray to make sure that it says what Pike needs to say in terms of, the specific measures to the school district. But absolutely, we'd be more than happy to help you with that.
Because education is becoming tremendously difficult to finance based on legislation.
Right.
And I think people need to know, people really need to know what's happening with their tax dollars as it relates to their child's education, and the burden that these cuts, I use the word cut, are going to take place, and how it's going to weaken some areas in our system, whether we realize it or not. We talk about how strong we are, but if you don't have the dollars, you become weak. And we want, I think we ought to have the community to know the processes that are taking place in our school district, so they won't be caught by surprise.
Sure.
That's just how I feel.
Yeah. We'll be happy to help with that sort of thing.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
You got it. So what we've got here, I've just got a few slides left to go. We've got here is a display, again, of your peer districts in terms of enrollment around the state, net levy per student. You're a little bit above the state average, largely thanks to the operating referendum fund. Many school districts around the state don't have the benefit of that. Fortunately, here at Pike, you do. So you're a little bit above the state average, but you're really not an outlier in the slightest in terms of your peers on enrollment. Here within the county, it's similar, somewhat on the higher end in terms of dollars available per student. And that really goes back to, even with all the challenges that we're discussing this evening, healthy property tax base, disciplined tax rate management from the school board, from the school administration, in recent years. So, we are in a place, fortunately, where Pike's able to raise, some degree of dollars above Marion County peers, to pour into your programs. And then just isolating it to the operations and the operating referendum funds. Again, this is on an enrollment basis. You're toward the end of this chart where you'd like to be, a little bit higher dollar amount to work with per kid. And then finally within Marion County, again, you're toward the portion of this chart where you'd prefer to be, I would imagine. And it's the operating referendum fund that's a key differentiator. Really, that's what I prepared. I do have just kind of one thing I want to, I'm kind of thinking about, Mr. Hoofer, your question about the various funds. Even as the education fund isn't impacted by this, the district transfers dollars from education to operations. And so as there's pressure on those property tax funds, even that can have an impact on classroom expenditures via, increased need or pressure to transfer dollars to the operations fund.
Right, yeah, that's what I was gonna say, because if we do that, then that's taking it out of,
That's right.
That fund is getting hit at a
Right.
state level also, so.
Right, yeah, it hasn't been a robust year in terms of
Yes,
growth
yeah.
of that fund either. So those are the materials we prepared. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are you hearing anything about referendums, the shape that it might take now?
Well, so referendum legislation was reformed, as you're probably aware.
Yes.
It has to be run in even years in the fall election, so 2026, 2028, 2030. Our sense is that there's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 or so school districts around
I
the
heard
state.
44.
Yeah, so similar numbers that choose to run one this fall.
Yeah.
We'll see what passage rates are. It's hard to say. It strikes me as plausible that a lot of districts passing, a lot of districts not passing could have an impact on further legislative changes. There weren't modifications to it this year, so I guess we'll see what comes in future years.
Also, Mr. Parkinson, with the cuts that we see, or the reductions that we see, however you want to say it, as an accountant and as
Sure.
a mathematician, I call it a cut. Do you perceive in the education arena that more people now will start doing referendums more often than not?
I do, and the evidence we have for that is this year. I don't know that I can quantify it, but we have a number of school districts around the state who have not run a referendum in the past that are choosing to do so this fall. And then we also have districts that are not at the end of their referendum cycle,
Who are
but
applying.
who are going to go ahead and run it early. And in those cases, in many cases, as much as we've talked about challenging numbers here, and they are challenging, there are other communities where it's arguably even more so. If they have a lot of farmland, or depending upon if they don't have as much business property presence. And so they're looking at meaningful reductions in existing operating referendum revenue, and some districts are choosing to run at a higher rate this year. So yes, I think the answer to your question is that I think the calculus around referenda probably has changed.
Mr. Parkinson, you did mention that someone is in a referendum now, and they begin, put themselves in a position to apply early before that referendum is up. In your lens, would you look at going to the end of the referendum, then applying, or having a referendum like some other districts have done, and then apply for another referendum?
Well, I mean, it's certainly a community-based decision. I think one strategy that to me makes a lot of sense is the cycle before it would be your last shot.
Yeah.
To me, it makes sense to run one then. So yours passed in 2024, I believe. So
Yeah.
you'd be due to run it in 2032. Believe me, I'm not telling you what to do. That's certainly a local decision. I think there could be merit in choosing to do one in 2030 or by 2030
Or before?
or before,
Yeah.
just in case it doesn't go well.
And
But
we'll
again,
also have an opportunity to kind of see what happens between now and then with some of the other referenda
Sure.
that are going also to see what
Yeah.
what the trend is and what our friends down at the State House do.
right.
I think in many cases, Dr. Young, when we talk about referendums, this is, you know, I don't know much, but I'm just happy to be here. When we talk about referendums, I think it's the attitude that we create in the community, that people buy into the referendums and go to the voting box to make the sacrifice for the referendum. And I think it's how we manage the referendum inside and outside to help people to understand that we're great stewards over a referendum. And when we come back, we hope that you would look at our track record as a district handling the referendum. I think, do you think that plays a role in that?
Yeah, I think that's well said. You know,
Thank you so much.
One thing that I think is really important to do is remain in constant communication with the community about the way the referendum dollars are being spent, being invested into your people, into your kids, into your programs. So that way, it's a familiar conversation when you get back to election time. I think if we were to approach the community and they kind of forgot about it because it was 8 years ago, and we have to have this tax conversation again, that's a tougher avenue.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So this type of analysis that you do personally, is this, or do you do this primarily for urban schools, or are you doing this for some of the rural schools that are in the?
It's all of the above.
Okay.
We are fortunate to work, I think, with all 11 school districts in the county. And, we Lake County and so on. But yes, we also work with rural districts.
And
Big,
I would
small.
assume the numbers for the rural districts are looking a lot like this, or even, like you said, worse because of the farmland.
Yeah, I mean, it's different factors. The farmland makes a big difference in rural communities. Their home values oftentimes are somewhat lower, so that impacts not as much.
Okay.
But then every district's got their own story. I think in Pike, I think the charter school sharing it's just a noteworthy element.
Where I'm going with that, I agree with the messaging to the community and all of those things. I also don't see this getting better if we don't make changes at the State House, and it is generally not the reps from our district that are doing this to us. And so I've kind of been banging this drum in a lot of our meetings that I really think we need to be working with other school districts around the state to get the messaging out that this has to change, because it's not just hurting school districts like ours. It is hurting the rural school districts. It is hurting all of them. And until those voting practices change to stop that from happening, it's only going to get worse. I don't see a world where we stay on this chart that you've laid out because of the people downtown. They're going to continue to shift it to be harder. So that's why I was asking that.
And to add on to what he's basically saying, and I don't know if when we talk about the rural communities never saw it coming.
Yep.
Because the Indiana legislators have always done their best to hamper Marion County. And so now it's spilling out into the rural areas with their hospitals, their daycares, and all of that. But their main objective was to bruise, to wound Marion County. We just might as well be frank about it. But now it's hitting these rural areas, and some of these schools are going to have to do more consolidation than what they've been doing in the past.
Yeah, I think there's going to be far-reaching impacts, and
Yes.
really, it's phased in over 5 years. So, we're going to feel a certain way in 2026, and
Yeah.
probably the challenge grows for a few years.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you so much.
Sorry to hold you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gray and Mr. Parkinson, for your presentation tonight. We move on to first reading, Dr. Maggie Bishop.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of
Good
the board,
evening.
and Dr. Young. This evening, I bring to you Policy 9500, which was discussed during your work session for your review. Upon our return at our next board meeting, I will be bringing this policy back with any feedback or any revisions that you would like for approval.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bishop. Action item. First up is our minutes of the Board of Education, regular meeting February 26, 2026. Motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
And moved and seconded, we approve our minutes from February 26, regular board meeting. No discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. We are on to HR report, Dr. Hunter.
Mr. President, members of the board, and Dr. Young, I request your approval of the HR report as presented.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, we accept our HR report as presented. Due to the nature of our HR report, no discussion at this time. Move on to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Action item C, supplemental board report, Dr. Hunter.
Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Young, I request your approval of the supplemental report as presented.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded, we accept our supplemental board report as presented. Again, no discussion, we're on to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Action item D, Mrs. Hardiman.
Good evening, Board President,
Good
members
evening.
of the board, Dr. Young. I am requesting your approval to apply for the attached build grant on behalf of Guyan Creek Elementary.
I make a motion we approve the apply for the build grant for Guyan Creek Elementary School.
Second.
Moved and seconded, we accept action item D as presented. Are there any questions?
Yes, Ms.
Dr.
Hart,
Moore?
the grant, is that the Frog Street?
Frog Street is actually the preschool curriculum. It's a contract.
Okay, but you
So
own
that's,
that-
right, that's something
Okay,
Mrs. Gray will
I was just looking,
present.
okay.
That's no problem.
Okay, we'll get to that one.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Thank you, President.
You're welcome. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Mrs. Hartman.
Thank
We
you.
have action items E, F, and G. Mr. Chad Heckman.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, and Dr. Young. I request approval of action items E, F, and G as presented.
I move that we approve action items E, F, and G as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, we approve actions item E, F, and G as presented. Are there any questions on action items E, F, or G?
Yes, Mr. President.
Dr. Moore?
The contract that you have with the 5G BPS,
Yeah.
that's a 36-month contract totaling $52,000.
For the internet services, action
Yeah.
item E? Yes.
But then you said during the process of time, there might be an option to go to 10.
Right.
Okay, if you did the 10, that would be over 70,000 for the
Right.
10. That would be $19.50 a month. My question is, how soon do you think you will get to that movement from the 52,002 to the 70,002? How soon do you think that will happen?
So how we handle these bids for internet services, and also as a reminder, these are E-rate funded, so this doesn't impact our budget a lot. It does impact our budget, but E-rate funds about 90% of these costs. So, but we typically will reevaluate at that 5-year point and decide, is this worth putting it out for bid again, or do we want to exercise our option to extend this contract?
If you're going with the 1450 contract, you would not be looking at 5 years. You'd be looking at the end of 3 years, right?
Yeah, let me pull it up. I think that is correct. So at the end of that, at that point, whichever option that we're going with, that's when we'll decide, do we want to exercise our option to continue, or do we want to rebid this? And sometimes it's in our best interest to continue on the contract that we've already negotiated. We do that a lot with our wide area network, which actually is on our contracts tonight. We were actually asking to exercise our option to extend that contract and not rebid it. Because what we look at is if prices are going up on these services, it's in our best interest to not rebid and to keep the price locked in where we were before.
You and I had an opportunity to work together with the computer.
Yeah.
And I asked you about the speed of it.
Yeah.
And you told me you wasn't interested in that at that particular time. You had other things you were concerned about. But I'm still worried about the speed of the movement of our computers in our system.
Sure.
What are you doing to improve that?
So we're on a replacement cycle for those computers, and we will, as they hit the end of their life, we replace those devices. But we certainly are concerned about the speed of our internet,
network speed, right?
Of our network and our computers that are on the network. We want to make sure that they perform their functions.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious. The 5 year, why didn't you look at the 5 year, which was 81,000, if you're going to do the 10?
So we could, and so the way that bid works is we can exercise any of those
Either one
options.
of the bids, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That would be 81,000 if you did for 60 months. Okay. I was just looking at that and see, I was just interested in it.
Sure, absolutely.
Because it's money, and we just heard the situation that we got coming in the near future. Is that right, Ms. Graves?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
Absolutely.
Mr. Heck, I had a couple questions. So
Sure.
one, the networking equipment, is that something that we're replacing like existing, like you were mentioning before, becoming to end-of-life equipment, or?
Yeah, so that's our district core equipment. That's where those are the big switches that the internet comes into at our data center, which is housed at the freshman center. And those have reached the end of their useful life, so it's time to swap them out so that we're up to speed. Actually, we need to make sure.
Impact some of the speed issues,
yeah.
Dr. Moore? Okay. And then the other one I had was the Metronet. Whenever I was looking them up, they seem like their business model is to actually bring their fiber to the organization.
Yep.
Is that baked in the cost of them bringing their fiber? That's baked
no
in
charge to that.
$14.50 a month.
It's part of the contract,
Okay,
yes.
it's part of the contract.
So,
Okay,
and
yeah.
we're very fortunate, or Metronet's also very fortunate. Their fiber runs right along Zionsville Road, so the run is not very long. They just
Okay.
have to get it into the data center.
I think I like the idea that all of the equipment is paid for, all of the connection is paid for, and all we have to do is, whichever contract you go with, whether it's the 36-month or whether you go with the 60-month,
Yeah.
we just have to pay that bill.
Right.
And not have to pay for the equipment nor putting fiber optic in. There is a cost to put fiber optic in. Thanks for helping Mr. Heck out tonight.
Absolutely.
Is there any other questions on EF or G? If not, we're on to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Mr. Heck.
Thank you.
Action item H, Mr. Clayton Booger.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. Dr. Young, I'm seeking your approval of action item H to seek bids for the Early Learning Center expansion project as presented.
I make a motion that we approve the request to seek bids for the Nathaniel Jones Early Learning Center expansion project. Second.
Moved in second that we accept action item H as presented. Are there any questions?
Question.
Dr.
Yes, sir.
Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Gruber. 18 bids, 18 different bids. You have Core Construction, who's been in Indiana for 13 years, which is a company that's been 89 years old. My question to you is, they're going to oversee the bidding. Are they going to get I've seen their work, looked at their website and did some research on it. Are they going to do any of the construction work? Okay, they're just going to handle the bidding.
Yeah, we opted, Dr. Young and I had this conversation before we even started this project, and we decided to move forward with the construction management company as advisor.
Okay.
So they do not self-perform any of the work.
Okay, that's what I wanted to be clear.
Okay. All right. Any other question?
Yeah, I've got a question, and I don't want this to come across wrong, because obviously I want us to get this building built. I want to bring all of our kiddos back up there. For this and other construction things that we're looking at, are we estimating in with the factors, we add a building that's going to add electricity, that's going to add, like, you know, there are ongoing costs that go up after we've added the building. I'm assuming we're doing, and maybe we can see at some point, that analysis of how those extra charges are going to fit into the operations, knowing that our operations budget is going to go down. It just, again, this is a great thing to do. We need to have more of our kids in early learning. I wish we could have I wish the other stuff with early learning hadn't happened. I just also don't want us to back ourselves into a corner where all of a sudden then we have to reverse on something because we added ongoing expenses, knowing how these rates are going. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if I may, so we, as a school district, are very, very fortunate. Many years ago, like 20, 25 years ago, there was a real push to bring energy managers to all of the local school districts. There were grant opportunities, different funding sources. In fact, that's how we got Rob Jordan 25 years ago to become our energy manager. Well, he's now sat in that seat for 25 years, and he is exceptional at what he does. Okay. So most school districts, if they want to look at any type of an energy savings program, they have to contract out a company to come in and do an assessment of all of their facilities, all of their HVAC equipment, their capacitor banks at the building, to determine how we can save money. Rob does that for us.
Okay.
It's already baked into his salary. He does retro commissioning for us on an annual basis, looking at our night setback, looking at our programming lines, looking at our capacitor banks, our power factor, all of the things that go into our electricity bills, our water bills, and he analyzes them on a monthly basis. So every time that we get a bill, it gets uploaded into a system called Energy Cap, a software that he uses, and he analyzes where we're leaking. And he can see very, very quickly, hey, there's an uptick at Guyan Creek Elementary School, let's find out why. And then we're able to cut that off. We've had companies come in and try to sell us those services, and you know what they tell us? They said, we can't save you any more money. The margins aren't there for us to make any profit and for you to save money. So we are trying to be very cognizant of what we're doing. And I think we're also positioned really well with your concern, particularly on the electricity side. We are just a little bit behind some of our other school districts with LED lighting. So there is another cost savings there that we haven't even tapped into yet, that will almost completely offset the additions that we're looking at.
Okay, that helps. And that just knowing those factors, because again, we're hearing everything with the money, and
Absolutely.
then we're voting to expand something else. I also want the community to hear that okay, these things are in place.
With that said, Mr. Gruber, the idea of inflation has been figured. It will be figured into the bids, I hope. Or am I out of line with that?
What do you mean they'll be factored
For
into
instance,
bids?
say this year, say we start in July, and let's say steel for the building was $750,000. By the end of November, it could be $950,000. Do we have those? Are those factors going to be in the bid? Because we don't want to get into a lot of change orders.
No,
am I
for
right?
sure. And a lot of that, that is incumbent on the contractor to figure that out on their own.
My point.
We have actually seen some very, very favorable bids in local bid packages just recently. I know there's been a steep increase over the last year, but if you shorten that up and look at maybe the last 3 to 4 months, there's actually been a slight decrease. And I think a lot of that has to do with there's less big projects going on, or projects are coming to a close. So contractors are looking to load up their docket with some projects. And I believe this is a really favorable project because they don't have to overcommit a bunch of labor resources because it's not a full high school, it's not a big hospital. It's a smaller project that kind of fills the gap. So I think this is a very attractive project to the contractors in the area. I'm very optimistic with the bids that'll be coming in.
My next question is, I'm going to always ask this, because we live in a diverse world, no matter what people and what laws have been passed and what has been taken away from our society. Are we planning to have minorities work on this project?
Yeah, and I think we'll actually see more minority-owned companies bid on this. I've shared this with the board many times before, but the difference with this project and some of the other projects we've done is the other projects we do it as a general contractor and then they sub everything out. And the only thing we have control on at that moment in time is the GC, that prime contractor. In this situation, we have essentially 18 prime contractors. So, if you look out into the construction world, there's only a few major firms that are minority owned right now.
I understand.
But there's a bunch of smaller contractors that do very specific work in the industry that are minority owned. And once again, it's something that Core Construction is committed to. That was something that was brought up in our interview process. And I think we're going to see a lot of minority owned companies come to the table.
If I'm not out of order, Mr. President, would it be conducive for us to make sure we have a line or a paragraph in there making sure in this contract that these contracts, when they come in, that we could say something from our perspective that we take into consideration minority contracts?
I don't know. We may want to speak with legal.
Okay. Yeah, that would be
I'm
great.
not sure that we can, especially now.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And I might add, Mr. Gruber stated, Dr. Moore, that he's been asked that he's explained this more than once. Because before you come on, that was always my number one question and concern is what opportunities is minority getting on bids and contracts in our community, because we want to be equitable and fair in all of our dealings, and so that is a concern. But I do think that it'd be prudent upon us to maybe check legal to see if we can do that.
And when we talk about minorities, Mr. President, we're not just talking about Afro-Americans. We're talking about Latinos, Asians. We're talking about the whole gamut. Let's not get hung up on that.
Yeah.
When we want to see everybody, if possible, be a part of what we're doing here in Pike.
Right.
So who will monitor when you in the bidding? Just from previous what I know, that once they get the bid, who monitors to make sure that the material is not subpar material to get that bid?
Yeah, and that's why we're going with the construction management firm on this, because we need somebody. So once all the bids come in, we will look at the lowest, what they call responsive and responsible bidder.
Okay.
So then what happens is Core Construction will sit down with their team and they will go through the entire bid package and make sure they hit every line item.
Okay.
So we call out specific unit costs. We look at the specifications. Are they matching exactly what we're calling out in the in the project specifications? And they have to assess that and analyze it. So you may have company A and they had the lowest bid, but when Core Construction goes through and they do the assessment, they may say, "Oh, they're missing this. They're gonna furnish us with a subgrade piece of steel, or they're calling for a different air handler unit." They would come back to us and say, "Hey, Mr. Gruber, this is what this bid said. So yeah, it's $100,000 lower, but they're putting in equipment that you don't want or that we didn't call for," and then we could look at the next responsible and responsive bidder.
Did we do that with the high school gym?
No.
The high school gym floor was purchased on a state purchasing agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Couple questions real quick. Core Construction, who chose them to manage the project?
We did, Pike did. I mean, we had a committee.
The committee? Okay. And then you talked about the interview process. 3.1 client references and 3.2 subcontractor vendor references. Were they not asked the question because they got a 0 out of 10 and 5 out of 10? Were they just not asked those questions? It's going to be in the contracts that we're going to vote on next with Ms. Gray. In the interview side, with the interview results. I just noticed that, and what that means is 3.1, positive feedback from previous clients, particularly K through 12 school corporations or other public entities regarding the firm's performance as CMA. Ability to meet deadlines, manage budgets, and resolve conflicts effectively. So the possible score could have been a 10, but I see that it was a 0.0 on that.
Oh, sorry. So all of those were 0 because those were references that we then, I failed to put those in there. I apologize. Those weren't brought to us at the time we did this portion of the evaluation. This evaluation was what we did after the interviews. The committee came together, and this was the score of the evaluations. And then we have all the references that we called all of these subcontractors and other people that have done business with them. And I can get you that information, but I apologize. I missed that.
Okay.
I didn't update this document before I put it in there.
So that leads me to go to, because it looks like they got a total of 75 out of 100.
So, sorry, core?
Well, at the total down at the total of the core.
Yeah, core got a 79.6.
Oh, because you don't have the 3.1, 3.2, because on the contract that we're about to vote on here it says 74.9. If I got this correct.
Oh, core is the green line.
Is it the green line?
Yeah, core is just the green, yeah.
Yeah, the
Okay.
average. So what it's showing
Okay, I
is
got-
that
I see
they
what you're
were,
saying. Okay.
the average was 74.9 across all of the firms that we interviewed.
Okay.
So their 79.6 shows how much higher above the average that they were.
So, and have we worked with them before on any project management?
In my time here, we have not had a construction management company at all.
Okay, so if you could just get those numbers.
references?
Yeah, the reference
Absolutely.
numbers, the reference scores out to us. I know you won't be able to do it before we vote next year, but if you can just for our records, that
Yeah.
way we'll know.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you've done some of your research, but I would note that Core Construction is the #1 K-12 builder in the country.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw
Not just here in Indianapolis, but
all over.
in the country.
Yeah, I think it's 8 areas that they're in, and K through 12 has been their most effective piece. So I'm not going to say let's table this until you get those numbers to us. I think President will handle that the right way.
I'll absolutely get it to you, though.
Yeah.
That fine? Okay. All right, is there any other questions or concerns? If no questions or concerns, we're on to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Mr. Gruber.
Thank you.
We're on to I and J, Mrs. Monet Gray.
Good evening, Mr. President,
evening.
members of the board, and Dr. Young. I request your approval of action items I and J as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second that we accept action items I and J as presented. Are there any questions on action item I or J? No question, we're on the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Mrs. Gray. We're on to board member items. Dr. Moore.
Well, I've talked quite a bit today. Thank you all for listening. We wish the young men tomorrow a
Saturday.
great victory Saturday. The ladies who wear red and white had to pack it in for the year. But I'm excited about what we see going on. And hopefully our athletic department will begin to surge much higher than what it is doing right now. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Mrs. Wilson.
Just, Mr. Parkinson, that was a great presentation. And Mr. Gruber, thank you for answering our questions, because you guys both got drilled today. So I think that we all got some really good information. I learned a lot just listening to the questions that my board members asked. So I appreciate that. We are going to be traveling. Most of us are going to be going actually tomorrow morning about 6:30 in the morning, heading to Louisville for what we need to do is get some training. I need some training on some things, and I'm hoping that when I get there, I'll learn a lot for the national training, and we just have a safe trip there. And thanks to Mr. Steve, he's going to be doing the chauffeuring.
All right.
The pilot.
That's yours.
Brother, Miss Daisy.
Mr. Hooker.
Daisy.
All right, I'm not gonna get myself in trouble. All right, so I wanted to thank Mrs. Blandon and Mr. McKinney. I went on a couple of school visits over the last couple of weeks, and just really appreciate their time answering questions, chatting with me, showing me around the schools we have. That's just a microcosm. We have amazing things going on at those schools. I know that is the case across the board at Pike, but just really appreciate them. And I'm always, Guyan is kind of the first introduction of mine to really seriously to volunteering and doing anything like that with Pike. And so it's always home. And so it's nice to see the refresh looks, again, still incredible, and just awesome to get to be there. Am looking forward to the conference this weekend. I promise I will show up heavily caffeinated, and we'll be ready for the trip. So you may have to bear with me, give me a little forgiveness, but I will be we will be ready to go and get down there. Looking forward to learning and to continuing to grow as board members. And then I just want to finally thank everyone that had anything to do with putting on the mental health fair. Fabulous. It was awesome last year, and then even bigger this year. So just major kudos to everybody involved. Really appreciate that for our Pike community.
Thank you, Mr. Hooker. Mr. Anderson.
Congratulations to our girls basketball team, and also well wishes to our boys basketball team and our robotics team for their accomplishment as moving forward. Also, thank you, Mr. Gruber. Your presentations are always very, very informative, and thank you for answering our questions the way that you do. And also to Mr. Parkinson and his presentation. And this is not for the people, I know this is the choir here, but for when people come back and reference this meeting, that is the reason why that we have to pay attention to who we vote for. Can't be emotional voters, we have to be informed voters. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Ms. Barnes.
I want to start off by saying thank you for all those who put together the annual mental health fair. Sorry, I'm a little tired. I gotta get some sleep. But it was wonderful, outstanding. I love the fact that it grew so much in just 1 year. I love our attitude as a district toward mental health. I think we're front runners in that space, making that a priority, saying that we care about our children, that we care about our families, we care about the adults who work in our district as well, and we show it by the way that we treat one another. So I'm really happy to have been a part of that. I look forward to learning as well at our conference starting tomorrow, and Mr. Hooker giving us a ride in the van there. So I look forward to a nice road trip with my fellow board members and learning alongside them and coming back to serve you even better.
If I can jump in, because I failed in this, thank you to Dr. Young and everybody on the maintenance crew who at the last minute had to get the van ready for us, because our initial form of transportation we were going to take, my Jeep, decided to not participate. So really appreciate it. Not mean to cause a sudden urgency for anybody, but really appreciate them doing that. So sorry about that.
Yeah, I suggested that a couple weeks ago, but you wouldn't.
I was trying not to be a bother and became a bigger one. So,
That's why we had it.
Miss Kelly.
All right. Glad to be in the number this evening. Had an opportunity last Saturday to participate in Treasures. Looking forward to hearing the numbers of how much was actually raised. And then got the report that last year we were able to give out $80,000 worth of scholarships. And that's not even including the classroom projects we were able to help fund. So I'm hoping we beat that and meet that, at least meet it, but if not, beat it this year. The mental health fair, as was stated, was awesome to see. The space that it's taking up this year from compared to last year, the number of outside vendors that we're partnering with that are coming in. Mr. Jacob, I applaud you and your team on that, and again, leading the charge with mental health in our district for all of those, not just our students, but even those that are just in our community. The coaches and athletes that have been recognized this year, we salute you. Looking forward to hearing how the sectionals this week, regionals. How regionals are gonna go this weekend, and having to get the updates on the score while we're on the road, but still will be reaching back to get those updates. So anybody that's there, just drop us a message so we know what's going on. Again, looking forward to some time, not just of learning, but to refresh and even to get to know the fellow board members that are going, get to know them better, and again, coming back, being able to serve our community even better.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Dr. Young.
Real quick. 'cause
Go ahead, Ms.
I'm sorry,
Ms.
this is what
Wilson.
happens when you're always the first, second. But I just wanted to take time to, Mrs. Gossett, I did, went to reading, and because they took the time, I just wanted to make sure she recognized. They took the time to send this to me, and I thought that, thank you. And I just wanted you guys to see that they all signed it, all the second graders signed it, and that this is my second time going to this particular class. She asked for me, and then I just thought I wanted them, hopefully, they told me they were gonna watch one of the videos, so I'm hoping that they are watching so that they can see that I did recognize.
Mrs. Wilson, can we read that out loud so people can hear it at home? Okay, it says,
I was trying not to be
if you can't see it, I'll read it for you.
You wanna read it?
Yes, it says, March 6, 2026. Dear Mrs. Wilson, thank you for being our guest reader for our African American Read In Day. We love the book, I Have a Superpower. We hope you can come back soon, Miss Goddard's class.
They all signed it.
Mr. President, let's not forget the young man that Mr. gave a report tonight. I can't remember his name. I want to thank him for listening to our friend the last 40 or 50 years that he's been around doing what he's doing.
Mr. Jacob.
Mr. Jacob saw one of his fifth graders in action today, so that's amazing. But you don't look a day over 70, man.
Dr. Honey. Wow. I'm sorry, Dr.
Yes.
Young.
All right. Well, I'm gonna follow that up by thanking Mr. Jacob. I think the athletic mental health summit today was outstanding. The children did a great job of posing great questions. The content I thought was phenomenal. So I think that was just an awesome event. I do want to recognize that we have Mrs. Hoofer, who is a member of the Pike Township Educational Foundation. I think my job now is to drive up bids because I never win. If I bid on something, someone always wants to outbid me. So I did my part. But we had a lot of fun, and thank you to the Educational Foundation for an awesome evening, but also thank you for what you do for us all year long in support of our students and our staff. And good luck to our young men on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Young. I just want to wish all of our travelers tomorrow safe travel, and hope you again enjoy your time and learn and come back, share. I want to appreciate our board for their continued development and seeking to develop. And I like what Ms. Kelly said in terms of serving and coming back and serving our community. We take our position serious. We love what we do, and it's sometimes a thankless job. So I thank you all for your service to our community. Thank our entire administration for your service and what you do for our community. And we just have a desire to work together and do a better job. Want to do an update on our assistant AD. That will be on our board report agenda for the next board meeting, so I want others to know that. So that has not been a forgotten item. All right, nothing else. Like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move, Mr. President.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.
Safe travels.